everyone. How you doing? This is the AFA podcast, the official podcast for animationforadults.com. My name's Rachel, and joining me today for today's episode, we have Nina. Nina's back.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, and also joining us again, if you've listened to our podcast episodes of Akira and The Incredibles 2, you may have heard her already. This is the lovely Allie, our artist in residence, joining us today.
Hi, guys. Great to be back.
Good to have you back, Allie. And we're all really excited. We wanted to take the time today to talk about a show that's very special to us. It has been a long-running show for Cartoon Network for quite a while now, and that is Rebecca Sugar's Steven Universe. It has just recently wrapped up its, I believe, what season was it? It was season 5? Season 5 finale, which was pretty big in the show's history because the episodes for this show have been pretty short, like less than a half an hour in length typically, but this particular about 11 minutes, but this this particular episode was practically almost an hour.
Yeah, it was about 45 minutes without commercials.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so they have obviously hit a big benchmark in terms of long-running episodes, and obviously 5 seasons worth full of content, and a lot of people have very strong opinions about the show. We have very strong opinions about the show, but
oh yes,
we won't go into that in the subsequent recording. So, as pretty much with our general series discussion, we are going to start off with, how we got introduced to this show, and then we'll keep our opinions pretty general. So if you haven't yet to really kind of get your feet wet with Steven Universe, and you're still interested in trying to get into without knowing too much about the general plot, then we'll give you our general ideas, our general opinion of it, and then I'll make sure to warn you when the time comes where we're going to be going a bit more in depth about particular episodes as well as events and characters that if you might want to, if you're okay with hearing spoilers, you can listen to, but if not, then I advise you to tune out. But so, and then come back when you have seen those things because they're very worth seeing. But yeah, we'll start with our general introduction to Steven Universe, and Nina, we're going to start with you.
Okay. So I started watching the show since episode 1 back in November of 2013, I believe, was when it premiered. I was a big Adventure Time fan. I adore Adventure Time, and I had learned about Rebecca Sugar through her work through Adventure Time, the songs she wrote, the Marceline episodes. I knew she was a friend of Ian Jones-Quartey, who is an artist I've been following since I was in middle school. He used to have a webcomic called RPG World before he ever entered animation that he published on Keen Spot back in the day. I don't know if anyone remembers Keen Spot, but I
seem to remember the name.
Yeah, I was a big fan of him, and I was following him, and then I learned about Rebecca from him because he was working on Adventure Time too. And so I know who she was, and I was a big fan of her work, and then I learned that she was going to be making a show, and I was super excited because at the time she was the first woman to be a showrunner for any show on Cartoon Network ever, and only the second for any kind of modern American television show other than the creator of Pepper Ann, who was I think the first. So that was very big for me, because it is such a male-dominated industry. And I thought that was so incredible. So I really wanted to be there from the jump because I thought she was a brilliant writer. And I thought the premise was so cute because it was very anime-inspired, like magical girl kind of thing. And so yeah, I was there from the first episode. The first episode that I really made me think the show was going to be special was actually the second one, Laser Light Cannon. Gem Glow was cute. It really did good work to kind of establish the status quo. It felt very much kind of almost like early Sailor Moon, where there really aren't any stakes. It's not really much any plot. You're just kind of okay, this is going to be like Monster of the Week fun. But then Gem Glow kind of, the emotional maturity behind Gem Glow with Steven's mom and his interactions with his father, who was already this very unconventional kind of setup because, he had a dad, but he wasn't living with him, and he lived in a van, but they were very close and very loving, and they really acted like father and a young son. And then the climax with the idea that, Rose still loved his father very much, and had the hot dog saying as the password for the canon. I just thought that was really special, and I thought there was going to be something really wonderful underneath this show. So I stuck with it back when it used to air once a week. I don't know if you guys ever watched the show at that point, but it was
no, unfortunately no, but I'll get into that.
Yes, we shall. But it was, at the time, it was really nice to tune in every week and just have fun with these characters, and then slowly learn about what was going on. And then, of course, the show really upped the ante as it went. So it was actually, before I was on this podcast, I had a podcast with my brother and a good friend of ours called the Toon Goons. And this was actually our first episode, was on Steven Universe, back when there was only like 10 episodes out. We were just so excited about it. We just wanted to talk about it immediately. So we've done many episodes about it in the past. So it's a very special show for me. And it just means the absolute world to me. Like, as a queer woman myself, like, I can't be more grateful than I am for this show to exist as it is and to have done what it's done. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes, definitely.
Well, thank you very much. Allie, how about we go over to you now and see, when did you first get introduced to Steven Universe?
Well, I pretty much jumped right into Steven Universe. Let's see, Nina, you said it started in 2013?
Yes.
Okay, I jumped into it in 2016, and it was completely by accident. I had seen a review for this show on YouTube and was so curious about it. It was just eating away at me. I had to see this show. So the first episode I ever saw was unfortunately one that had a lot of spoilers. It was Lion 3 straight to video.
Oh boy.
And
that's a good one, though.
So I jumped right into it when it was dramatic. So I thought it automatically was a dramatic series. I didn't know it started out being funny and being cute like that. So when I first saw this, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a great kids show. And I remember thinking, this is just like classic Cartoon Network. I mean, it has mature themes in it. It's beautifully animated. It's simple. And I would just watch these episodes during college. I mean, I would just sit down, and after I was done writing a paper, I would sit down and just watch some clips from Steven Universe. And eventually I just became obsessed with this show. So you know the film Maze Runner?
Oh, yes.
That's what it was like for me. I was just thrown right into the show. I did not know what was going on. I didn't know what crystal gems were. I didn't know who Rose Quartz was. I didn't know who any of these characters were. But as soon as I watched this episode, this is going to sound very strange. I felt like I did know all the characters because this episode was so well written. And it's a very special one to me because I've seen all these other episodes, but the reason this one's special is because I have a very strong relationship with my mom. So you can bet when I saw this one, I was a mess when I watched it. And I guess that one of the reasons I started watching it more is because I liked that it focused on relationships over anything else, and it has great characters. So yeah, it really isn't much of a big story for me. I was just thrown right into the world of the crystal gems, and I haven't left yet. I love it.
Yeah. As far as we know, we're still going.
Oh yeah, I love drawing the characters. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, it's such an inspiring show. Like you were saying, Nina, it's just an inspiring show. It's the most colorful show I've ever seen. I think the creators of the show may have invented half of these colors. No joke. I can't find these colors on any spectrum.
No, the art is stunning. The background art and everything about it is so gorgeous. I love how you said that, like, even though you kind of started in medias res, like, you still felt very familiar because with the characters. I think that's so amazing, and it really does speak to the strength of the writing.
It does. I mean, when you can plunge right into a show and not know what's going on, what storyline is taking place, who's left, who's coming in at this point, and you can connect with the characters almost immediately. To me, that says that this show is really great, even if it does have a few episodes maybe that don't. Every show has that. Every show has a few episodes that don't work up to speed, but even in that case, you know, when you can just jump right into any episode and connect with the characters just like that, that says a lot for the story, right? The storytelling. And I absolutely think this is grade A character development. It's wonderful.
Because that's something I always wondered about, because I remember watching cartoons as a kid. You're not always there from the beginning. And when it's like a long running story like this, I wondered how it was like for younger kids just tuning in and not knowing what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
I hope they had a similar experience that you had.
Well, something that I just remembered when all of us, when we were growing up, one of the great things about the cartoons in the 80s and the 90s is that you could, like what you were saying, just jump into any one of these and you could tell who was who, what was going on. And for a while we had a kind of a dry spell with that. And when I watched Steven Universe, I was shocked with how quickly I could relate to these characters. It wasn't connecting, it was relating to them. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I think that's what makes it so great.
Yeah, that's
for sure.
I'm going to add another layer onto that because I had a very similar, basically introduction to this show. I will admit when I first started seeing advertisements for it on, I think it was either on television or I remember even seeing like theater like teasers, like, you know, those when they're trying to, like, they advertise, like, basically they have commercials on the big jumbo screens.
Oh, yes.
First looks or whatever.
Yeah, they were having a first look on Steven Universe, and around the time it was coming out. And I'll admit, and I partially blame whoever was, responsible for the promoting the pilot, really, for whatever reason, did not sell this for me. Like, and I partially blame the fact that, because at the time I wasn't that big into Adventure Time either, so I had no idea who Rebecca Sugar was or anything.
Same here. Absolutely same here.
Or really, like, what had been the big draw of Adventure Time was the fact that it also eventually evolved from one thing to become something else, which did have those really in-depth characters. Like, I had no idea Marceline was even a character in really? Adventure Time until after the fact, and then I saw a few clips of her that have been recommended to me. It's like, oh wow, a character like this is in this type of show? That's not what I expected. So I, slowly being very, very slowly being drawn into this world of, both Adventure Time, Steven Universe around the same exact time. And then I recall at some point, I think the season episode, the first season finale of, the very first season, Jailbreak. I believe that's the first season finale.
Ah, yes.
That was the first episode I guess I quote unquote saw. And then that's which reveals a very, very hefty spoiler. So I'll avoid going into that. But it basically really, it shocked me. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It shocked me in terms of what kind of stuff that they were going for, and basically using that as the springboard of like, oh, I don't believe, like, I couldn't, like, was almost smacking myself in the face, like, how in the world did I write this show off in the beginning? Why did I do it?
It's a slow build for sure. That moment was such a triumph.
It really was so good. Like, it made me sit. It made me sit up and take notice. And I even went to my brother not long after that. It's like, hey, yo, dude, check this out. And he's like, wait, what? He's like, whoa, what's happening here? I'm like, yeah, look at this. It's amazing.
Even though you had no idea what fusion was or like any of this stuff, you were still like, whoa.
Yeah, because at that point we were like trying to put the pieces together in terms of what brought us to that point in the episode. So that encouraged us to look back, and even seeing the episodes out of general order. Like, I saw Lapis Lazuli before I saw Mirror Gem. And
Same
then got
here.
drawn into that whole like character arc of that. I think that was about like the mid-season when we got introduced to her. But we'll save that for a more spoiler discussion. But on the note, I felt like a detective kind of going back through previous episodes, and again the kind of the building of this particular world and the whole relationship between Steven and the Crystal Gems. Just kind of learning it as I went and being more and more drawn into the relationships of the characters, but Steven with not just as the Crystal Gems as a whole, but his individual relationships with Amethyst, Pearl, Garnet, his dad, even some of the other people in town, and then having the broader scope of, okay, what happened so long ago that has made, like, why are all these ancient, like, relics or temples and stuff that clearly look out of place on the planet Earth. Like, what are these? What? Just asking a whole bunch of questions, which were slowly answered over the course of several seasons, and even building up on some stuff that I had not even expected for us to get to in the course of these 5 seasons. But yeah, Steven's a darling. He's probably one of my favorite television protagonists or cartoon protagonists ever.
Oh, he's the best.
Just for the nature of what we'll get into a little bit later. And it's
a good boy.
He is such a good boy.
I think he might be one of the best cartoon boys. Like, he's, to me, up there with Hogarth from the Iron Giant. He's such a great
amen to that
boy, a cartoon character. He's really complex and he's very relatable, I think, to boys and girls, and that's what makes the show so great. I mean, girls can relate to him, and so can little boys.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's even for someone, like I said, even for someone who may be watching these episodes out of order, that doesn't matter. Or what episode you might tune into, there is something that will really speak to you. And there have been a great deal of moments, even when I'm not actively watching the show, but things that the show has reminded me of, and things about, my own life that I kind of use as a default mantra now when I'm going through a tough time. And it's really been helpful. So
that's really interesting you say that, because, well, I relate to it mostly because, again, I have a really great relationship with my mom, and I suppose that, whenever I think about things, I think about that one episode, and how Stephen always has this great relationship with his mom, even though he only kind of, well, that's kind of a spoiler, I suppose, but that's one of the things I love about it, is the relationships. And so I guess when I really think about things like friends who have, moved away, or maybe something I did in school, or just conversations I've had, I find myself thinking about the show sometimes. It's just bizarre, but that's how it works. I do think about it sometimes.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Like, I feel like the characters, they're simple but complex at the same time, where you can you can project yourself into them and also see your friends and loved ones into them. Like, there's so many, even though they're fighting monsters and they're going into space and having all these extraordinary adventures, they're still very human.
And there was another show that pulled that off. This is coming from me. Dragon Ball Z pulled that off too.
Well, there are definitely some Dragon Ball references.
Oh, there's a ton of Dragon Ball Z references. They're so fun.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place. I mean, Flying Cloud.
Yep.
Yeah. Or even
I got hit by an airplane.
Oh my god.
That one, when that ruby crash lands on Earth, and it's the same pose of
oh my gosh.
Of Yamcha.
You're absolutely right.
When Vegeta killed him.
You know what? Another one. It was when Steven and Stephanie they're driving. They're in that race, and all I kept thinking about, this is so strange, but all I kept thinking about when I watched it is like, I wonder if Goku is taking his driving test next door. And that's what those cars are driving by. It's a dumb idea, I know, but that's all I kept thinking about.
No, it's not. Like, the Crewniverse have said that, like, every time you think it's a reference to anime, it is.
Well, even fusion. I mean, even the fusion idea. I mean, that was something that one of Goku's sons and Vegeta's sons did in Dragon Ball Z. What was it? What was that series after Dragon Ball Z? Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting. Super. That's right.
Super, yep.
Oh yes.
Sure.
Yeah, there's so many references, but yeah, definitely with the car racing, I thought, those must be the cars that they're getting killed by when they're taking the driving test.
Even like Amethyst's shoes kind of look like Toriyama shoes.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah, and of course when Peridot and Jasper land on Earth, it's very Vegeta and Nappa feeling.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
made those jokes. So many people have made those jokes, especially like they'll take those clips of that exact episode and put like the Dragon Ball Z abridged audio clips over top of it. And
I've got to see that.
Works.
But there's so many other anime like we could literally just spend the whole podcast naming every anime reference in this show.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, there was an exact thing of that at I think it was at Otakon a few years back, a panel where they were going to dissect the different anime references that were in Steven Universe. My brother and I tried to attend this, was filled up way too soon.
Well, I think Steven Universe, I mean, if you could, I mean, consider it an American anime genre in animation. I think Steven Universe has pretty much filled everything up with that.
Yeah,
it does.
An homage.
Definitely.
It's very inspired by both Western and Japanese cartoons, for sure. Like, it wouldn't... I mean, the whole premise is a magical girl show, right?
It really is.
Yeah, you could say Rebecca Sugar actually successfully fused magical boy and girl together.
I would say so. It was a successful fusion of both. But we shall talk a bit more about fusions in just a little bit. So how about we're going to go ahead and basically lift up, or basically we're going to drop the spoiler curtain. So if you basically don't want to get involved with any spoilers for this show, if you want to experience it relatively blind, like I said, you do not have, like Allie and I have said, you do not have to start at the show in the very beginning in order to get what's going on. It is very easy to get into what these characters are going through and just pick an episode that feels like it would be enough to draw you in, and then just go with it.
Oh yeah, you can just leap right into it. You will immediately latch onto these characters and you'll know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and if you're spend any time on the internet anyway, you've probably seen some spoilers at this point.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
But it doesn't ruin the experience of actually watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's something to be said about it, Nina. I mean, the fact that you can watch it over and over and there's always something new that maybe you get out of it, some new emotion rises to the surface, maybe something you didn't see before or hear before. And that's something really special too. You can keep going back to it and enjoy it every time you watch it.
Yeah, I've rewatched some of these episodes maybe 5 times or more. When it's my comfort zone. I just go back and I rewatch Steven because it just makes me happy. It puts a smile on my face.
The only thing, there are a couple movies that do the same for me. I think if I could pick one, How to Train Your Dragon, the very first one, is one of the few movies I can always watch again and again. I could watch probably 4 times in a row and react the same way each time. And that's with Steven Universe. You can go back, you cry at the same spots, maybe you are happy with the same ones, and that's really great when you can do that. I mean, when you can go back and have the same experience, but you enjoy it just as much as if you saw it the first time.
Yeah, that's the mark of a classic, I'd say.
Oh yes, definitely.
So yeah, so if you truly want to experience this show blind as possible, go ahead and you can tune out and come back in and listen to the rest of this when you've done so. If not, and you're okay with spoilers, well then, get comfortable, get a cup of tea, and let's just sit and talk about Steven Universe. So let's kind of break this down bit by bit. So let's, in the general, since we want to keep talk about the plot, because we've been hinting the fact that in terms of how it starts off relatively simple and it basically kind of builds and builds and builds as the plot goes. So in regards to those instances, what would you say, certain episodes that really kind of tipped you off as you were watching, that really kind of really think helped move the story forward in terms of the overall plot?
Well, the fascinating thing about the show is that the hints are always there, even if they're not the focus. Because the one thing that's really important to note about the show is that it's always from Steven's perspective. Mm-hmm. We only learn things and experience things as Steven learns them, experiences them. That's why it changes so much over time, because he grows up. And he learns more about his world and his life and his family. And that's why the status quo in the beginning is very simple and then gets very complex. But so in the beginning, we see a lot of things that get called back or indicate something that there's something else going on. But because Steven is kind of just thinks this is just a fun adventure, he's not really focusing on these things. Mm-hmm. So there's always stuff going on in the back, the monsters or hidden relics, hidden all over the place. Even in Bubble Buddies, this is kind of flashing forward to the finale, but since we've dropped the spoiler curtain, when Obsidian has a sword, you can see Obsidian's sword in Bubble Buddies when they're underwater.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. There's all these things are there the whole time. So it's kind of hard to say, but I think the episode that I think for most people kind of got them to start paying attention to the show and thinking that it's a little bit more than just Monster of the Week, and like really drew attention to the fact that there's a mystery and then there's more than meets the eye, is probably Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem.
Yes.
When things start to finally get a bit serious, because that's when Steven kind of realizes that the crystal gems aren't just like these fun superheroes. Like, there's more gems out there and they're not always good and they disagree about things, and it's very confusing for him and he doesn't quite understand what's going on, and they can have these amazing powers and there's a whole world he doesn't understand. And I feel like that's when Steven really first realizes that there's secrets being kept from him, and that's when the audience is made aware that there's a wider picture here more explicitly, I would say.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely, yes. I think that one of the points well, actually, the one with the videotape, Lion 3 straight to video, that's when I started developing a connection with the characters. But I think the tipping point is the one, I can't remember the name of this episode. It may be the one you mentioned, Nina. It was the one where he met Lapis Lazuli for the first time.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem.
That's the one, Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem. When I watched that one, I knew they were going into deeper ideas when they hinted at the gem homeworld, and you briefly see it like a star from the distance. I kept thinking, that really piqued my curiosity. I kept thinking, are we going to get to see the gem homeworld? And I think when they really started introducing more of the homeworld gems, that's when things started to get very serious. And I love how there isn't a lot of conflict. Like, there is great conflict in this, but it's a good balance. Like, the show is not afraid to have quiet moments to let let you think, let you collect your thoughts for the next sequence.
There's something very morbid about it, because the idea that Pearl was just keeping that mirror in her gem stored away, and they knew that there was a gem in it who's like a person, and they kind of just didn't do anything about it or cared about like Lapis and wanted to bubble her right away or trap her. And Steven was just so confused, like, why would you do this? Like, how could you? It really does kind of change your perspective of these characters, and where they're not just, because you've just seen it from Steven's perspective, where they're these amazing people and they're perfect, but then you realize, oh no, they're like, there's something really messed up going on, and I don't know why they're acting this way. It seems out of character at first.
Something I always liked about some shows, at least when I was growing up in the 90s, some of the shows that I always loved the most are the ones where the characters weren't fully good. Like, something I know that little kids, of course, they do need to see shows where there's happiness. You don't want to expose them too early to conflict. But something I always liked is when you have characters who are not fully perfect. Maybe they made a mistake, maybe they're hiding something, and it's at that point in this episode, you do realize, wow, these are not the goody two-shoes characters that Steven thought they were. There is something really big going on here. Why did they hide this character? And then, of course, we can't forget the episode where Jasper and Peridot show up for the first time.
That was nuts.
If Lion 3 straight to video drew me in, this one drove the nail in, and I was completely trapped forever, because that episode, I loved that one. I mean, that's
so big.
Oh,
it's
at the
big.
Time,
it felt like the biggest thing that could ever happen at the time.
I remember sitting down at the computer watching this episode, and when the giant spaceship comes down, because I kept thinking, what did the gem spaceships look like? I thought, okay, maybe they look like this, maybe they look like that because of this, and then suddenly this giant green hand comes out of the sky, and I looked at that, and I looked at my glass of water, and I kind of pushed it away from me, like, okay, what on earth did I just drink? I was like, what is in my water? And then said, and I kept thinking at the moment that hand came out of the sky, thinking that is the most original spaceship design I have ever seen. Nothing can top that. I've never seen anything like that. Who would have thought
ominous.
A hand? That is the creepiest thing. Imagine that in the real world. And kids probably thinking, that's the scariest thing that could come out of the sky like a spaceship, a giant hand.
It made me think of Super Smash Brothers, because I remember one of the things.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then of course you have what were those the Legend of Zelda, those hands that come out of the wall maze.
Oh God, no. Oh.
Yeah.
I never played Legend of Zelda when I was a kid, but those hands are creepy. There's just something about a big hand coming out, reaching after you. And even now, it just gives...
because they bring you back to the beginning of the dungeon.
Oh, I know, no. But I love that design, and especially because in a weird way, it kind of works. Because, I mean, I love how they have the hand point. There's so many details going on, I had to pause it. And then suddenly you find out there's this wand that can make the gems blow up. That was really, oh my gosh.
And it's not any gem, it's garnet. The strongest one.
Gets dissolved like confetti.
Yeah. It was rough.
And we had known about the, we had gone back to, I'm sorry.
You finish. You go. Sorry.
Well, I just because again we were talking about before, Nina, in terms of laying down the groundwork of stuff, because that was a season finale. They had already laid the groundwork of leading up to this point, because we knew gems could be poofed, because you know what happened to Pearl when she was showing Steven how to use a sword, and she ended up getting poofed. And so we knew that was a thing that could happen, but it was the fact that Garnet was forced into poofing. And the fact that, like you said, it was Garnet himself, the strongest gem of the group. I
think another thing that makes that moment so effective is, like, when Pearl poofs, it's really quick. Like, poof, she's gone. Kind of like the genie in Aladdin, where he goes, poof. Like that is a cloud of smoke. And it's kind of cute. You know, it's creepy, but it's harmless. In this one...
I mean, she was stabbed with a sword, and they had that, like...
Yeah, okay, maybe not so cute.
It was scary.
But still, it's very quick. You know, poof, she's gone. But in this one, I mean, there's just, like, green stuff going through her, and it's just prolonged, and suddenly she just blasts into a million pieces, and it's, like, completely creepy compared to what happened to Pearl.
Oh,
they were painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like, I thought, I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, what is going on? And then suddenly, you know, I mean, you have Jasper who comes in, and I remember when Jasper came and landed, I thought, okay, this is a cool character. I loved this character, and I'm glad they brought her back, because she is just so intimidating. But at the same time, you kind of understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, she is not a one-note antagonist. She is basically, like, I mean, and they bring out layers of that as we see more of her. And
it's like,
see that with all the characters, too.
It's like Thanos in Infinity War. You know, even though he has this, first you sit down and you think, this guy is absolutely insane. I mean, even my mom said that when she saw Infinity War. She said, this guy is nuts. And then as we started watching more of the movie, Mom turns to me and she says, you know what? In a weird way, you see where he's coming from. And in a weird way, in a way, like, I mean, a little bit of a way, you kind of do sympathize with this character. And to me, that's kind of where the villains, I don't like to call them that necessarily in Steven Universe, because you can kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, humans are these weird alien creatures that do kind of frighten them in a way. They're different. They're organic.
She's a product of her upbringing and her environment and her society. And that's kind of what Steven is about, like what you're saying, Allie, where the villains don't feel like villains, because part of what Rebecca wanted to do with the show is to show that, like, with compassion and understanding and communication, we can reach an understanding. You know, not everybody is forever lost. Like, bad people aren't just bad forever. Like, if we choose to listen and to work, then we can change and
absolutely
be better. And,
well, not to say that, you know, I mean, there's still something very entertaining about bad guys who love to be bad. I mean, and you know, you love to hate these mean characters, like every Disney villain. I mean, no redeeming qualities, but you love when these guys do their thing and they're mean. I mean, it's really fun to watch. But what you were saying, though, Nina, yes, it's always good also to have the sympathetic characters that really, you know, boy, they do horrible things, but at the same time, there's this human side of them, and you do sympathize with them, and that makes it's almost a Shakespearean quality, you know, with it's this old classic quality to have this villain you can relate to, and I just, again, that's what makes the writing so great.
Because you don't want to other, like that's what the show does, is it's very against othering. You know, when you have somebody just evil, you know, they just seem very foreign and they don't make any sense and they're just crazy or whatever. But
and that would be totally against
when you take the time to understand what their motivations are and where they're coming from and how part of it, you know, is their own actions and part of it is just circumstances, like it humanizes all these characters, even if they're can be very nasty.
Oh yeah.
Them are quite nasty, but it's important to know the other side of it. At least that's what the show is teaching. It's teaching compassion and empathy, which is what Steven's superpower is. He's a superpowered empath.
And that's a rare superpower. And a lot of people, you know, if you read lists and all the superpowers, you don't really hear a lot about empaths except for Raven and Teen Titans, you know, because that's one of her big powers. And to have an empathic superhero, that's the main kind of power, I think that's very uncommon, and it's really clever. It's a great plot device, too, to have them as an empath, have the main character as an empath, because they're the portal for us to understand the show. And to have them be empathic towards other characters almost helps us connect with the other characters. So it's a really great plot device to have him have his mother's power.
Especially that he's a little boy character, because when you think about superhero powered male characters, it's usually like very power fantasy. It's about strength. It's about beating people up. It's very rarely about feelings and about talking and pacifism. You know, in fact, he is a boy, and he has these more maternal, typically feminized characteristics, is really special, and he's such a great role model, I think, for all little kids. Like, or boys and girls can relate to him, because he has both feminine and masculine qualities, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's what makes him so special.
But what something was really great about that is, to me, it was a kind of a risk doing that with a male character, because they are usually, you know, they're like Goku, you know, they're always action here, and that's what he does. He is that, but he has that maternal side, and a lot of the men I've known in my life are like that. So to see a character with those wonderful qualities blended together, I think it's I guess you could say it's a gem. It's a real gem.
It's a gem. Steven's a gem.
Oh, boo. I didn't mean to make a pun, but I had to. It was just, it's great to have that little boy character who is a real little boy, but he has he loves action, he loves that, but then at the same time, he can just be very calm and talk to people and sympathize with them.
And he cries a lot.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that. Oh no, it's worse than Dumbo for me when Steven Universe cries.
You know, he's not afraid to cry or be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, he loves weddings and romance.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
He's a big cheese ball, you know.
Oh,
he likes to wear dresses and makeup.
My dad is the same. My dad would just despise what I say next, but my dad is just like Steven Universe. No, he doesn't look like it. He looks like one of those guys that would hang out with Dwayne Johnson. But he acts just like Steven Universe. Actually, you two just reminded me of that. I didn't realize it. That's the cartoon character he acts like the most. He loves looking at his wedding pictures with my mom. He loves looking at those. He loves helping me pick out a dress sometimes. He would always hold my purse for me when I was very little, and he would just stand around with the purse. He'd stand around, and it's so funny. Like a woman, I would walk around the corner, and he's standing there with his hand on his hip, with his other hand out, looking like a fashion model. So yeah, he acts just like that. And yeah, so maybe that's why I got the connection with it. Who knows?
It's can't pin on any one thing, but go ahead, Nina.
No, you go. I was just gonna agree.
We all love this show. It's just we
love Steven.
Yes. But yeah, it's interesting when you seeing the show through Steven's perspective, as you were saying before, Nina, and how that's how we slowly get involved in the world, and also each individual characters. And one of the things that you could definitely see as you watch the show, you know, with different episodes, you know, varying from episode to episode, is that we'll have certain episodes, like some are a little bit more plot focused, but then we'll have a few character centric episodes, which will have maybe little snippets of plot here and there.
At least foreshadowing or theming or something.
Yes. And at least every now and again, you'll have an episode that says Stephen and Amethyst, or Stephen and Pearl, or Stephen and Garnet, Stephen and his dad, Stephen and, say, maybe one or two of the inhabitants of Beach City, which is, for people who may not know or people who might already know, it is basically a recreation of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, a place that I frequented quite a bit as a child.
Oh, wow. My gosh, really?
Yes, it's the Mayor Dewey is actually named for the Dewey Beach, Delaware, which is another separate of the Delaware beaches. Because Rebecca, I think Rebecca
used to go there as a kid, right?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And so did you. That's so cool.
Yeah. So as soon as it was hilarious because at first I didn't realize that I thought it was just a generic beach town, and then I forget where I heard it. I think my brother did some digging on the internet, and he basically said, Rachel, like the town of Beach City is based off where we used to go get taken to the beach as kids. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Get out of town.
That's awesome.
Seriously?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean even the Funland is basically, you know, based off of the Funland that is in the Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk, which is actually there. And, you know, there's candy, pizza, like, there's, but not a home run, like, you know, or, privately run, like, pizza place or, like, but more like a Grotto's Pizza. That's everywhere.
I certainly hope they open up a Lars donut shop there now.
Oh, there are definitely donuts to be bought. Like, my dad would always, wake me up early in the morning and would get me, like, Dunkin' Donuts when we walk on the beach together. So it's like, there was a lot in terms of, like, aspects of Beach City that really like, oh, I know this, I'm familiar with this and this.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome.
It's so cute.
I know, and I can't believe, like, again, I found this out after the fact, after, like, opening my eyes to the fact that this show was doing what it was in terms of the relationships between the different characters and how, you know, it was trying to, you know, talk more about compassion and empathy. And I mean, that already had me on board at that point, but then found this extra little tidbit that, oh my gosh, this is based off a place that I actually am very familiar with.
Giant extra gold star on that, right?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Is...
So now I kind of have that extra special warm and fuzzy feeling whenever I go to the beach now. It's like, oh.
Oh, I'm never going to look at our vacation spot the same way again, because it's funny because we always go to Panama City Beach in Florida, and there's a little donut shop right on the beach. And so I remember watching the Steven Universe and thinking, oh, that's really cool. And then you just brought this up, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's really neat. I'm never going to look at this small donut shop the same way again. I'm going to expect Lars to pop up.
Oh, Lars. Speaking of Lars, there's another character that we got a lot of, like, again, in the beginning, I wasn't sure how to feel about this character.
He was a jerk.
He was a jerk. He was a preteen.
Very much a teenage boy.
Yes.
But what teenage boy is not a jerk at that age? Again, you relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a boy.
A really insecure teenage boy who has serious identity issues.
Oh, yes.
And not willing to let people know how he's really feeling, and always just being, like, very, one believes he should be in a certain mold when he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it feels so bad for him.
It's a real big twist to his character too, because you don't expect him to be anyone you can sympathize with. You think he's just going to be that jerk that Stevens happens to be friends with, like the jokester. And boy, does it do a complete, I'm not even going to call it a 180. It's more like a 360 times 4 on what he does later on. I don't know if it was season 4 or 5 where
4, I think.
4.
That was it. Oh my gosh, when Steven brought him back to life like that, I mean, that was like, what?
I can't believe he died.
I can't believe
the fact that he died in the first place was huge.
That might be one of the first on-screen deaths I've seen in a kid's show in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really gutsy, because, I mean, that can mess kids up if you don't do it right. And I think they did it right.
They did. They gave him this really nice big moment, and it was fantastic.
And then you suddenly can sympathize with him because you, again, through Steven, build this bond with the character. And it's like, darn it, Rebecca, sugar, you did it again.
Yeah, and it's great because Steven always liked Lars. And you're like, watching Steven, you're like, why are you hanging out with this guy? He's a jerk. Like, Steven, like, sees the best in people. I mean, that's what that whole episode was about. That's when he, like, has that breakdown, and he's like, you jerk, but I knew, you know, what do you know about my mom? You know?
I think it's interesting.
Right.
You just said that though, Nina, because I think the moment we do kind of see a little bit of a nicer side to Lars is when Stephen and Sadie, that's her name, right? Sadie?
Sadie.
Yeah.
Oh, they're watching the video of Rose Quartz, and when he comes in and he's all boss, he's like, what are you watching? And he sees they've been crying. He doesn't even say anything. He just kind of walks out with his hands up. And I remember saying, okay, maybe there's more to him.
Yeah, and like Stephen always telegraphs that. Like, Stephen can always see the best in people even when you as the audience can't. Mm-hmm. And so when they do turn out to be good people, we see their good sides. You're like, oh, Stephen was right, you know.
Though
like,
even Ronaldo tests Stephen's patience quite a bit.
Yes.
That's the one character. If there is one relatively unlikable character in this show, is most likely going to be Ronaldo, because even he tests Stephen's like ungodly amounts of patience.
Oh, and even the moment you look at him, you can tell like this guy is going to be a jerk.
Ronaldo is a joke character. He's kind of like a vehicle for the Crooniverse to kind of poke fun at certain, you know, cis straight white male behaviors.
Oh wow,
are annoying, but like, you know, it's more of a friendly way to call out these kind of not so great behaviors that maybe need to be rectified without being super like accusatory in a way. Like they kind of they poke fun at him, and he's sort of a character. He's supposed to be a butt monkey. You know,
okay,
gotcha. Take him seriously because he's ridiculous. And when you watch him, you've met people like him.
Oh
yes,
everywhere.
You know, if you recognize yourself in him, maybe you can kind of see that, like, okay, maybe I should reevaluate myself a little bit without being mean-spirited about it, you know?
Well, it's funny you say that, Nina, because I was just thinking, you just reminded me of who Ronaldo does remind me of. And it's a character, again, in Dragon Ball Z. It's the little blue guy. What's his name? Is it Emperor Pilaf?
Yes.
Oh, I was so annoyed by that blue jelly bean when I first saw him on screen. I wanted to just take a baseball bat and swing him back into space. But then I realized, well, where would those little side moments be? After a while, he grows on you, and you do kind of laugh because you've known jerks like Pilaf before. You've known those little guys who are just, they're just trying to prove that they're bigger and badder than you, and they're just trying to be louder and mouthier, and then of course they get their comeuppance. But yeah, in a weird way, they fit in to that story. They fit in. You could not imagine a storyline without this type of character.
Like he's sort of the stand-in for like the bad ally. Like I love that episode where he becomes an honorary crystal gem.
Oh god, yeah.
It's so funny, but it's also so true because like I've met so many people like him both in real life and offline and online who just like fall into those traps of like thinking that they're being an ally, but then they're just kind of making it about them, and then
it's one of those moments.
Subject to kids, I think.
It's like one of those moments where you just wish you could sick Casey Jones on him. You know, like, get him!
Yeah, but then even Ronaldo is sympathetic because we learn about his relationship with Lars and how, you know, he was just a very enthusiastic kind of outsider kid, and he had this relationship that went sour for a reason he didn't understand, and it kind of isolated him from other people and made him escape into these fantasy worlds and ideas because he didn't have friends, because the one friend he had betrayed him. And it's like, oh man, even Ronaldo, like
even Ronaldo apparently, it's just like, man, I can't believe it.
He still definitely has some growing to do. Like,
his arc is not finished. I never really watched. I'll be honest. I never watched a lot of the episodes with Ronaldo in them, but I do like. I was reading. I do like the nickname Lars gave him, Social Napalm, because that's pretty much perfect right there. Because yeah, there are people when they walk into a crowd, you could literally part that crowd because these people are just too critical or they're just so unlikable. But then at the same time, you kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't.
Like, clearly they have social issues that they don't really realize, and you don't want to be rude, but you're also just kind of like,
You're also afraid of them too, because you think, oh, what if they, oh my gosh, what, because they're usually very smart. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to walk away quietly.
Thankfully.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, those are two characters. Like, again, even characters that may come off as annoying in the beginning, they definitely have like either their place in the story or we get to experience some surprising character growth. And I like how that doesn't happen with every single character in Beach City, because it's I mean, there are some key moments where certain characters, like, where things shift in Beach City. Things like, Mayor Dewey is, basically resigns from being mayor because he is not doing his, there's someone who is better at the position than he would be. And he's willing to go along with that. And then even other stuff like, Sadie quits the big donut when Lars is no longer there, and she's basically poor thing is working herself to death, and then she makes a change.
A rock star.
Yes, that's right. But I think a big turning point though in the series. I think this is probably something everybody knows by now. It's when Blue Diamond shows up.
Oh, yes. When
that's
we get
another
face-to-face introduction with, at least physical introduction with the diamond.
Well, I remember some of the clips of her being in shadow. You always see the silhouette of her, and I like that. It's a really nice touch where you don't get to see all of her. It's kind of like when you would have a character in a classic film and you would just keep them off screen. You would see a hand. It's kind of like Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget. You don't see them fully, but in this case, when you do see her face, all I remember thinking was, oh my gosh, she is so beautiful. This is an amazing character, and her voice. And she really changed the tide, because you have this character who is just centered around sadness. I mean, pure sadness. And I loved the little bit about how when she is crying, Stephen he cries too. And that, to me, kind of hints at the big spoiler right there. Why can he do the same thing when she's doing it? Of course, there's a deeper connection there. But when she shows up, it's a real game changer in the story.
It is.
Rebecca Sugar describes her as a ghost.
Oh, yeah.
Just like this spirit of sadness. And that episode where she premiered, before we see her face, The Answer, when she's in like silhouette, that whole episode was modeled after Lotte Reininger, who's a classic, she's an animator. She was actually the first woman to make a feature-length animated film, like back in the 20s or something. And she made them out of these shadow puppets that in silhouette. And so that whole sequence was modeled after her filmmaking.
Oh, that's so cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's really, but yeah, Blue Diamond's design is so gorgeous, and you just get drawn into her. You're like, who is this beautiful,
she's hypnotizing.
Yeah, and I love what you, like, when you talked about her making Steven cry, because when you first see it, you're like, oh, it's just like anime tears, like Ghibli tears where they cry like really huge tears.
Oh, yes, I know.
It's really big because he's crying a big lady's tears.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it's great that he sympathizes with her to such this degree that it's almost like in Spirited Away, where the main character starts crying in the garden. Chihiro starts crying with Haku in the garden. That's what it reminded me of almost. And I kept thinking, I wonder if Rebecca Sugar kind of was inspired by that garden scene in Spirited Away.
Probably. I mean, they definitely used the falling scene of Chihiro and Haku in the episode with Stevani where they're falling.
Yes, you're right. Oh my gosh,
I know exactly what episode you're talking about.
I can't believe I didn't catch that before.
Education.
That's
one of my favorite episodes.
Oh wow,
it's a beautiful episode.
I think another episode I like is the one where we meet Bismuth. I love that character.
Oh, yeah, Bismuth is great.
She's just awesome. I mean, she's just awesome. I love Bismuth, and you sympathize with her so much. This lady's been trapped in a gem for how many thousands of years?
Who knows?
I mean, she has the worst case of claustrophobia probably on record. But I mean, it's just, she's so energetic, and then suddenly it's like when I guess the best way I could describe her is like a person in a movie who wakes up from a coma and they realize 100 years have gone by. and she wakes up and realizes none of the other gems are there. They're all gone. What happened? Oh my gosh, Rose Quartz trapped me here. What happened? And she was just a great character.
Yeah.
I'm glad they kept her around. She's a good character. Like, I was afraid for a moment she was going to turn bad for a moment. And I thought, oh no, I hope they don't do this with her.
Same. And it's definitely in keeping with like episodes that raise the stakes. Because it definitely gave us a new perspective into Rose Quartz and how she like straight up lied
Oh,
to
yeah.
everybody, and had these secrets. And then, you know, this idea that Steven has to bear that burden of these secrets and this legacy that he doesn't understand, but it has so much darkness to it. And he's just a little kid, you know? I mean, well, I guess he's a preteen. Like, we learned that he's older than we think.
Yeah, how old is Steven? I thought, like, at some points you think he's like 10, and then he acts like he's 15. So you don't really know how old he is sometimes. How old is Steven?
I think it's, yeah, go ahead. You go. I think you got this.
He was 13 until the episode where they're at the barn where he turns 14.
Okay, so I wasn't too far off then. He is like a teen.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because, like, everybody was really, like, Connie was really surprised that he was that old, because she was like, wow, I thought you were younger. And he's like, why?
I am really excited, too, because I found out that the voice of Connie's mom, the lady who played Connie's mom, was in Cowboy Bebop.
Oh,
wow.
Gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
And so now whenever I hear, I hope I say her name, Dr. Marshwaran's voice, I think, oh my gosh, it's the lady from Cowboy Bebop. I can't unhear that.
Which, like, Faye?
I don't know if it's Faye. It was the other lady who was in Cowboy Bebop, the movie.
Oh.
Spike Spiegel's past love interest.
Oh,
or the lady
Julia.
from the movie.
I think, all I know is Steve Bloom is married to her in real life. So whoever
It's
he's
Julia,
married
then.
to. Who?
It's the voice actress for Julia.
That's it, Julia.
Oh, okay. Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome. It's such a different character.
I know it. You don't see her the same way again. But yeah, it's just I love Connie's family. I think they're completely underrated in the show. They are so funny. I love how
one of my favorite characters.
Oh, she's great.
I relate to Connie so much. Like, I love Connie. Like, she can do no wrong in my eyes.
It's very rare that you see a tomboy who's also kind of a girly girl at the same time. Like, she's just a perfect girl in a way, a great girl character.
Yeah, she's smart, but she has her insecurities. She's like very devoted, but like she's not quite sure what her role is in all of this, but she wants to be a part of something. And
she knows how to pick up a sword, but at the same time, she likes picking out dresses. You know, I love girl characters like that. They can be tough, but at the same time, they do have this cuteness to them. And I just love Connie. She's great.
Yeah, she's another character that's come a long way from the start of the show.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Everything that led to who she is where we find her at the end of the season 5 finale was, you know, it was all present in her character. It's just we took this journey with her just like we took this journey with Steven.
Well, I think I just love their relationship. I didn't know where this was going to go on the show with Steven and Connie. I thought they were just going to be friends at first. And, you know, you don't always have to have romantic undertones between two friends. Sometimes that could make the story fail, but I love how they gradually introduce the fact that maybe they will become more than friends, but it's not too overblown. Like, it's a very minor part of the story.
It's like an innocent child love.
Oh, I love it. It's just so cute.
Pure.
When they first fuse on the beach, that's the cutest thing ever.
And when they dance and they're just giggling. And
oh my gosh.
He drops him, you know, and it's like the gender role reversal, and it's just, and Stevani is so cool.
Oh, I know.
Who doesn't love Stevani? Like, they are the best.
Oh, they're awesome in my book.
Yeah, that episode where where Stevani's introduced is another big point with a lot of people. I think that's another big fan favorite episode in terms of not only do we get to see Steven's first fusion with anybody, but we get to see, you know, we're introduced to this interesting combination of both him and Connie, and just seeing them enjoy time together. And also get to see Garnet's enthusiasm for fusion, because we don't know at the time of this episode, but yeah, that she is a fusion herself. But that's a big, very huge hint in terms of her reaction to the creation of Stevonnie, in terms of how much she treasures the idea of fusion.
I think another fun thing about Steven Universe is the relationships. They're just so great. I remember what was the episode where Steven and his dad take Garnet on that? It was like, I don't think it's a camping trip. It's like a road trip. They go to that hotel.
Hold on. That
Keystone Hotel.
Yes. That's the one. I remember laughing so hard because when Ruby and Sapphire are fighting, all I kept thinking about was, oh my gosh, that is my mom and dad to the T when they are mad at each other. Oh my gosh, that's my dad stomping around, boiling mad, and there's my mom just sitting down coolly, just throwing just stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is just like my mom and dad are like when they're cranky. No, really, when Ruby's just like marching around really angry and stuff. Like
Ruby's facial expressions in that episode.
Oh my god!
Every time.
It totally reminded me of something you'd see in the classic Sailor Moon cartoons. One of the characters gets mad and starts yelling, and her face just gets real crazy. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, that is so funny. Her expressions, she could just keep doing that for all I care. That's just so funny.
And something, if we're talking about characters and really character relationships that really that we particularly treasure in this show, there were two in particular that jumped out for me. Obviously, the first one that really tugged on my heartstrings was the relationship between Steven and Pearl.
Oh, yes.
Especially since that has the whole extra layer, since I think she is the closest character tied to the past and his mother, and seeing how that relationship develops over time in terms of how Pearl is still getting used to calling Steven and not Rose.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
their developing relationship. But the other favorite character that I wasn't sure I was going to like in the begin with, but I really loved how she eventually grew on me. Peridot.
Mm-hmm.
Peridot, yes. As soon as we got introduced to the kind of character she really was underneath it all, the more I watch her, I'm like, this is me at 7 years old. Like, holy crap.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And it's funny because I even showed this because I watched this show with my brother and my mom. Like, this is a show we watched together as a family. And as we were watching more of the early arc as Peridot was introduced to the group and eventually became a crystal gem. And I kind of asked them, I was like, does this remind you of anybody? And Mom and my brother looked at me like complete and deadpans, like, oh yeah. This sounds very familiar. I'm like, yeah. I wonder what happened.
You must have been a really difficult kid, Rachel.
Yeah, unfortunately. I have a lot of things to apologize for. It's like
I
started as a Peridot and became something close to a combination between Amethyst and Pearl.
I think I grew up being kind of like Amethyst and partially stayed Amethyst, but got a little bit of Pearl in me.
I definitely was the Pearl as a little kid. I was so anal. I was so type A. I liked lists and organizing things. And
that's my mom.
Certain way. I was that kid.
Pearl
is my other favorite character. I just relate to her so much. She's such a beautiful, tragic mess, and there's so much depth to her. Like, you were saying that she's kind of like represents the past, and she definitely does. Like, Sugar has said that Pearl is supposed to be the past, Amethyst is supposed to be the present, and Garnet's the future.
Yeah, appropriately.
And they're all also representative of Rebecca's like different roles as an older sister, because when she first pitched the show, she sort of pitched it as like a show based on her little brother, Steven Sugar.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And he's a background artist actually on the show as well. And she kind of wanted him to be like the ultimate Steven Universe, to be like the ultimate little brother character. And she designed
wonderful.
Each gem to kind of be a different aspect of herself as a big sister. So like Amethyst is like the fun side of her where they just kind of hang, and her Pearl is the kind of more motherly, kind of obsessive, protective one who's like always anxious about things, and then Garnet is like the more like cool big sibling who's kind of elusive and mysterious, but you like look up to them, but they're kind of like far away from you, and you sort of viewed herself into all of these characters in their own way, but they definitely become their own entities as we learn more about them.
That's interesting you said that, Nina, because when I first saw these characters, I really like how you said that, because the first time I saw these characters, I saw Garnet as more of the mother figure to Stephen and Pearl as a big sister. So when you say it, when you put it like that, that definitely does bring a new spin on the characters. That's really cool.
Yeah, she is I almost thought of Garnet as like the dad, almost like the kind of stern dad who's like loving but like not very communicative, you know, but supportive.
Well, that would explain Ruby having such a hot temper, I guess. Oh, definitely.
Hello, this is Mom Universe. The kids are playing swords. Yes, playing the swords. They're bleeding. Oh no, they are.
Oh no, they're dead. I panicked. They're all sister characters in a way. They're just like different versions of being like a big sister. Like, but it is funny because like I remember like Mayor Dewey comes to the house and he's like, "Are your sisters home?" And Steven's like, "Sisters? I don't have any sisters."
What sisters?
Because their family dynamic is just so unique, and he just sees it as what it is for him. You know, like they're the gems. They're not his sisters or his aunts or his moms. They're gems.
Well, they're almost like all of that put together. I mean, you could see them as his sisters. You could see them as his, well, in a way, his moms. And you could see them as that, almost like dad figures, because Amethyst can sometimes act crazy, like a dad can do sometimes with his kids. I mean, it's that's what makes them so great.
Yeah, they're a unique family unit, like, and it's an unconventional family.
Yeah, it's a very unusual. We've seen a family unit, makeshift family unit before, like with the X-Men cartoon, with even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The turtles were in a kind of a family. They weren't necessarily brothers, but they kind of had moments where like Leo would be the father figure, maybe Splinter would be, but it wasn't always there. With this, you can pretty much change all the roles around and it would fit. They could be aunts, they could be uncles, anything. And that's very uncommon. I mean, that's very uncommon where you have all these people raising this kid. I mean, that's really neat to me. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's like that episode where we first see Stephen as a baby.
Oh my gosh.
Greg is like, we're going to have to work together to raise this kid because he's a special boy and none of us know what we're doing.
I love how they all react to baby Stephen because, you know, the gems, they're asexual. They can't reproduce like humans. They've never seen babies before. So, I mean, when they react to him, that to me I was really curious about it. I'm like, okay, how are these alien creatures, because that's what they are, they're aliens, how are they going to react to this little baby? And boy, did they give us great reactions to that. I like how Pearl was kind of almost turned off by the baby. At first, again, that's a very gutsy thing to put in a kid's cartoon. You have a character who is a female, who is a motherly kind of figure, who doesn't really like this baby at first, almost spiteful, because
when you understand the underlying reasons as to why she's not baby.
Well, by this point, I think, isn't it by this point we already know why she is kind of, isn't this like a flashback episode?
Yes.
Oh yes, okay. But it's still kind of a gutsy thing to put in there, because at the same time you think, wow, she really didn't like him when he was a baby? I mean, wow. And then you just have Amethyst, who thinks he's the coolest thing ever, and then you have Garnet, who's just automatic mother figure or big sister figure to this little baby. And they were kind of awkward giving the gifts to little baby Stephen. And of course, little baby Stephen is probably the cutest thing I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, he was a cute little baby. And of course the
misconceptions about him. Like Pearl just thinks that he's like a fleshy vessel for Rose.
And she even puts her ear up to him and goes, "Rose, are you in there?"
Yeah, like, and you know, Pearl, like, she doesn't like baby Stephen because of all the characters, she has like the least interest in humans. Like she was really only here to save Earth because of her admiration for Rose and what Rose found important. Like she's not like super she learns to like humans and start interacting with them, but like initially she's just like couldn't possibly care less about human lives other than to just be like, well, we must protect them because they are incompetent. But yeah, like,
and Rose liked them for some reason.
Yes. But with baby Steven, like Garnet thinks he's a fusion, and I guess technically he is, which we find out later, but that's not quite it.
Yeah.
That was an interesting part in the season finale, where you find out that the gem can be separated from Steven.
Oh God! Well, let's take a minute or so before we jump into that, because
okay,
I don't know if we're ready to jump quite into that.
Okay.
Yeah, like we're getting there. I promise we're getting there. But there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I mean, this show is so dense, right? Like every episode is packed with something, whether it's character development or foreshadowing or theming or funny jokes or good character moments or heavy plot stuff. Like there's just so much to talk about.
No, I know.
You could be here forever.
Well, what you were saying, Nina, I mean, there's so much to cram into these very short episodes, and that can be a problem sometimes, because when you have all this storyline to cram into, let's say, 10 to 11 minutes, that can be a sugar rush almost to your brain, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't process all of this. But with this, it's fast and it's slow at the same time. It's very weird to say, but it moves quickly, but you can still process all of this information.
It almost makes sense why they stopped going from the weekly releases to these giant, what we now call Steven bombs, in terms of the Steven bombs are drops of several episodes at a time, or either in a single week or over a couple weeks, like say one day every couple weeks, in terms of releasing new episodes in small portions. They basically kind of cover a singular arc of the story, or at least an important arc.
Well, it's interesting you said that, Rachel, because, I'm not going to give any spoilers away for this, because we have a future podcast of this, but with Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that one can be like 11 minutes long. But what's really cool is episodes with a lot of content are 30 minutes. So I think that's actually kind of clever, because not only does it give you a chance to have more character development, but it also lets you know, in a way, after you start to recognize the pattern they're going for, when more character development is going to take place. Because you know, okay, it's a long episode, I'd better sit tight because something big is going to happen here. And that's how it is with Steven Universe too.
Yeah.
When you know something big's going to happen.
The Steven Bomb thing started because Cartoon Network did it once for a series of episodes. I don't remember the series, the first Steven Bomb, honestly, which one it was, but they tried it once because the episodes were all kind of related, and they wanted to create just like a promotional thing to like increase ratings, you know, and it did. They got amazing ratings. And so from there on after, whoever was in charge of Cartoon Network decided that they're only going to air Steven in this bomb format.
Okay.
How amazing the ratings were the first time they did it.
Oh, okay.
They just decided they wanted to repeat the magic. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Every time they aired Steven, it was in these chunks. And it wasn't because it was taking a long time to produce episodes, because that's a misconception that some kind of salty fans might have, where they're like, they're so lazy, they're taking so long to make the episodes. Like,
I know, you hear that all the time. That is so annoying when people say that. Oh my gosh,
it's not true. Like the season finale, they finished production on that like almost a year ago or more.
Oh my gosh,
it's just been sitting there. Cartoon Network has just been kind of, and it's something they've been doing with a lot of their shows. They did it with Adventure Time. They did it with like Clarence and things. I'm not quite sure why they're taking on this model. Maybe it's just their way of combating, like, because television ratings for children's programs are going down in general, just because there's the internet now and all these other things competing for kids' attention. But yeah, the network would just sit on these episodes sometimes for like years, or a year full before airing them.
Well, it's like Infinity Train, that really cool show Infinity Train that they were going to put on Cartoon.
Show.
Well, it was just they had the whole promise of, here, we're going to release this soon. We have a big plan for this. Well, they never did it. And I just learned recently, it's a go now, but it's been like 2 to 3 years or something since they first advertised they were going to release it. And I thought, what took them so long?
I really don't know what they're doing. And it makes being a Steven Universe fan in particular so punishing. Because we have months and months, we have these hiatuses.
They could be going through some kind of a shift in like authority, like in power right now. Like I remember.
Oh, they did. I think they have a new president.
They might start speeding things up again, because I remember when Michael Eisner became the president of Disney back in the, of course I was a baby, but I remember reading about when he became the president of Disney. Disney films before Eisner came on board the projects were taking longer and longer and longer and longer to make, like the Aristocats, all from there. Really long time to make, and people were getting very bored, and they were watching TV more, and so it just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And then suddenly the Disney Renaissance comes along with a new person in charge, and they're pumping out films almost once or twice a year.
Well, it's actually the opposite with Cartoon Network, because ever since they've gotten this new president, they've started thing. Because they used, like I said in the beginning, once upon a time, in a time far away in the year 2014, when the world was different, we used to get Steven Universe every week, more or less. And there would be like a hiatus of maybe a few months in between seasons, like a normal show.
Mm-hmm.
Or with Samurai Jack, where it was almost 10 years.
Well, that's different. Yeah, you used to be able to tune in every week, and there was a new Steven.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And then that's become a thing of the past.
I remember reading that article, where was Steven Universe? Like, where is it? Where are the new episodes?
Yeah, you just wait. And sometimes they don't even tell you. They'll just be like, Steven will return, like it's the Avengers or something. But
like Thanos will return in the next episode.
Yeah,
Thor will return.
When? They'll tell you when. They'll be like, oh, it's slated for, I don't know, spring of 2020. But like Steven's just like, okay, we have no clue when it's coming back, and the creators don't have any idea. We just have to wait. At least with this last update, they're like, it's coming back in fall, and it's like, okay.
Mark the calendar then.
Mark the calendar, and it still might not be right.
You know, it's absurd, and it's so frustrating because the release schedule, I think, really hurt the show because it is so, there's a plot and there's a momentum and there's all this character buildup, and fans were so desperate for content, and whenever we got content, and say it was an episode that was less plot heavy or less serious, there wasn't as much lore or gem stuff, maybe it focused more on the beach city residents, people would get very salty and bitter because they're like, this is just filler, this is nonsense. And they wouldn't have felt that way if the episodes were coming out at regular intervals.
Exactly.
Even
every
with
single bomb had to be a big event. When it wasn't, people were disappointed.
It was kind of like when you had Star Wars: The Clone Wars was on Cartoon Network, and suddenly they had that big cliffhanger at the end of, was it season 4 or season 5, and then nothing else happened. It was gone. They had this whole season planned. Suddenly they only released it in 2016 or 2017 or something, and on Netflix. And I'm thinking, what took them so long?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like, okay, it's like they should actually release their commercials like this. Steven Universe will return in 2020, and then a post-it note appears. Don't count on that.
Oh, or I always say corporate meddling, but that's the wrong term. Station meddling.
Station meddling. Like Deadpool's in the back room just fiddling with the wires.
And I think it's so weird when people say that these episodes are filler, because like filler refers to a very specific concept in anime, where when an animation studio is adapting a manga and they just create original content to wait for the manga to catch up. But this is an original show.
Well, it's kind of like, it's like in Dragon Ball Z, where they would have certain episodes that had nothing to do with Toriyama's original work at all. It was just something goofy or something. It was funny, but like, okay, where's the story? And they would do things like that. And it's not pointless. It's entertaining. You shouldn't get upset about it. I mean, these writers have to work hard. They have to create something to entertain you while they're building their world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like the show wouldn't feel the same if they just dropped all the gem lore on you at once. Yeah. It would be very overwhelming. They have to build these concepts up over time.
Filler's necessary.
It is, and it's not filler. It's the show. It's what it is. This is what the story is.
Yeah, like filler. If I may properly, sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought, Nina.
Like my dad and I watched Adventure Time together with my siblings, and he really liked it. And now that it's over, he wanted to watch another cartoon with us, and we've all been really into Steven. And my sister like sat down and explained to him like the whole thing of Steven, like all the gem stuff. And he was telling me, he's like, I don't know if I can watch this show. It sounds so complicated. There's all these rules, like all these weird systems and aliens and things. There's like so much going on. It's really overwhelming. And I had to be like, Dad, don't worry about it. Like, it's introduced really slowly. Like, you're not going to get overwhelmed. It's not like they give you this big exposition dump and explain everything. You're supposed to like hold all that in your brain. Like, they introduce these concepts very gradually and naturally. And so by the time you get to the finale, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
exactly.
So if I may, just for real quick and make sure for, like, as you said, in terms of the differentiating between slow bits of the show, like maybe just a quieter episode or quieter moment with where we get to bond with the characters, as would most people would say as filler. In what I say is real filler is, say, if we're in the middle of, like, I only feel like I have an understanding of what proper filler is because I watched Naruto.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Growing up, and that is probably one of the worst offenders of filler I have ever seen, basically
it's
because
like 3 seasons of filler.
There was more.
See, I never watched a lot of Naruto, but I would catch the episodes once in a while. And I remember this one episode, I don't remember what it was about, but it would just then plunge right into a weird story. It was about these people who could shapeshift. They had really pale skin and red eyes.
Oh my God.
What is that episode that has been eating away at me for years? Because I saw it.
I don't remember.
They want to build this utopia. There are these people who want to build this utopia. And these people, there's these 2 women in the sky, and they can change their bodies. They can turn into these monsters.
God, I swear to God, that must have been a filler show or filler episode.
Really, really good. I remember it started out really dumb, and then suddenly it throws you into this, and it is really good.
To be fair, some of those, even when you have those episodes, which really in the grander scheme of things don't really add to, even much like with those slower episodes of Steven Universe, like say we refocus on a member of like the Beach City characters, or like say for example, if we get like a short flashback arc of Naruto and his training days with his teammates, those aren't necessarily bad things to have in terms of developing the characters and the lore of the world and just, finding new ways to endear us to these characters.
Exactly.
What makes it bad, or what makes it so noticeable, is if it's breaking us out of the ongoing action of the story.
Exactly.
Not necessarily, which is definitely, Naruto does that quite a bit, especially in the later portions of its run. Steven does not do that. I think as far as I'm concerned, having that experience of seeing both of those two things and seeing a really good example versus really bad example, Steven has just quieter moments or quieter bits to kind of break, like you said, to break up the action of a lot of the gem lore and finding out more about the ongoing story in general in terms of the involvement of the homeworld gems, etc. It is to break up that action. And
you could see it you could kind of consider it this way. If you were, let's say, on a roller coaster, would you rather be going in a constant loop, like a somersault, like a loop all the way around with nonstop action to where the point that you have a headache, you're blacking out, you can't take all of it in? Or would you rather just have these slow points in the track and really enjoy going up over those hills?
The latter, please.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, Allie. Like, you need the anticipation.
You need quiet moments too. Because if you don't have quiet, you can't appreciate the action, because if it's nonstop, that's the problem with shows like Teen Titans Go. It's just nonstop here, now is noise and action. But the original Teen Titans had quiet moments, even if it was goofy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Steven, Miyazaki, he uses these in his films, and there's the concept in Japan, it's called ma, and it's sort of like the space in between action. Like he describes it as like, think of it as like the moment in between clapping, where you can't really clap if there's nothing in between, right? That's what Steven does. You know, like I think about even like in the finale arc where we go back to Watermelon Island and we've
oh my god,
you know, right before everything hits the fan and gets crazy, we're like, let's just take a breather, and just sort of slow down and relax and kind of see how far we've come, and also use it as a moment to kind of explore the conflict in a different way. You know,
yeah,
direct. You know, like let's just kind of experiment with our themes without being like, here's all this shit happening. It's really overwhelming. Oh my god.
There are a few shows that can be quiet like that outside what Miyazaki does with his movies. Yeah, definitely with this one.
And before we move on to talking about the finale, which I definitely want to discuss, because there's a lot to unload there. Maybe just to do a brief aside about the music, because there's a lot of, I know it's.
Oh my god!
I feel I would be doing the show a disservice without talking about the and because Rebecca Sugar, if you know people are familiar with her work, because she wrote a lot of songs for Adventure Time.
And she sang the ending song, right?
I'm trying to remember if she did, because
for Adventure Time, no.
Okay.
But she was very heavily involved in that, and you can see if you look at her work in Adventure Time, you see that definitely that kind of the way she goes about composing the songs and the lyrics and everything and writing them, how they carry into Steven Universe. But it's because the show isn't open was at least not when I first saw it was openly musical, but for some strange reason it still works whenever we have a moment where a character breaks out into song, and even though it's not I prefer, like, say, when then maybe Greg grabs his guitar and starts strumming a tune, and how that seems a bit more, like, in character for him. But at the same time, even the songs are so well written and have, like, tying to the themes of, like, say, the episode or the character dilemmas, that it's you kind of just go along with the ride.
Oh, yeah.
Music is such an important part of the show. Like, Rebecca said when they were doing casting, it was more important for her, like, all the actors needed to be able to sing. And they all need to have some kind of musical background, and they do in a way. I mean, Estelle is Garnet.
Oh, Estelle, love her.
And Patti LuPone as Yellow Diamond. You know, Broadway legend.
Oh my gosh, is that who voices her?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
She's a Broadway. Oh my gosh, what's her name again?
Patti LuPone.
Patti. Oh my gosh.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. That's her.
Oh my god, that was Evita?
Yeah, Vita.
Oh
she's
my
Evita.
God, I know. Oh my god. Oh, that's awesome.
It's amazing.
Sorry about that. I had a geeked out moment for a moment.
That's perfectly fine. I like to catch. I love it when we get those on the podcast.
I love musicals, and oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell my mom that she loves that musical.
And like Dee Dee Magna Hall.
Yes.
Musicals.
You've got Nicki Minaj played a fusion.
Oh my. Yes.
That was Amethyst and Garnet's fusion. That was
Sugalite. Oh my gosh, she made me laugh hard. Who has not
badass fusions I think we got for a long time.
Who has not had a friend, a lady friend who's like Sugalite? Anyone know? No, I've known a few. She cracks me up. All I kept thinking is, where was she when the Avengers were fighting the aliens in New York?
She would have stopped it.
She would have stopped it a heartbeat.
Yeah, she didn't have a tantrum on the way.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
but yeah, the music is such an integral part of the show, and singing and breaking out into song. And you're right, Rachel. Like, it is kind of odd. You're like, okay, this is a musical now. But it's natural because the songs are very true to the characters' feelings. Mm-hmm. And they don't feel very they don't really sound like show tunes. They don't feel very performative. They feel very honest and raw, There's
feels like those songs that I don't want to say the kind of songs you sing when you're driving your car, like the songs that pop in your head, but it almost does feel like something you could just start singing and it just feels right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like almost like an impromptu expression of how you're feeling. And that's one of the amazing things about Rebecca as a songwriter is her songs are very simple.
Exactly.
There's so much truth and honesty to them.
Oh, let's not forget Susan Egan as Rose Quartz. Meg from Hercules.
Yes.
Oh, she's great. I mean, she has a beautiful voice.
Oh, she does.
So yeah, they all sell that with those wonderful songs.
And even the background music with Avivan Surashu, like, is so good. Like, the fact that each crystal gem is represented by a musical instrument, like Pearl is the piano, Garnet is like a bass, Amethyst is like electric drums, and Stephen is chiptunes. And then when they fuse, their fusion is a combination of those two instruments.
Yeah, you could say music is almost a theme, like a plot device in this too. That's really cool. I never noticed that before.
And like, and music is almost like it's part of gem culture. Like, the gem attack was called like a song, and like there's singing just seems to be like a part of gem culture. Like when Yellow Diamond is like, Pearl, sing for Blue, she's sad, and they just do it. Like, it's just kind of part how they communicate. It's just so well integrated.
Yeah, because gems, at least actual like physical gems, they do respond in a way, like sound and vibrations, which are caused. Sound does cause it. It does affect them. So I thought that was an interesting. Again, it feels like they did their research when they were like, or at least a lot of like they took a lot of consideration when they were trying to build this universe and this culture around the fact that these are living gemstones.
Yeah, it all checks out. Like, the actual geology involved is all accurate. Like, it's
That's another thing I really like about the show is where you get to kind of see where gems are born, the kindergarten. That was a really good episode.
Yeah, that was particularly heavy.
I think
was that before Mirror Gem?
Yes.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe that was the first episode that was like, oh, there's something going on here.
I think
check that.
Having the corrupted gems, I think, also brings a new concept to Steven Universe, because you think gems are invincible at first, then you see they can be corrupted, and that's frightening.
I mean, the fact that they are gems, like, we thought they were just monsters.
And then you see they're all gems, and for a moment or two you can see who they were, and then they'll change. One of the really creepy moments for me is when Yellow Diamond and Blue Diamond manage to temporarily heal a gem, and she is talking, wants to know what's going on. Suddenly she mutates back into that monster, and that it's just great to have that darker aspect, because it adds more depth to the characters. Like, I like how they didn't have it work. At first you think, okay, Yellow Diamond's going to change her back. The diamonds can fix them. But they can't fix them.
Yeah, not on their own. But that's basically the final arc of this of season 5 is basically the realization that once the diamonds can work together, or they only all 4 of them can heal the corrupted gems from what they've been turned into. And just as a correction on my part, On the Run, which is listed as the episode where we learn about the kindergarten, is, at least according to Wikipedia, I don't know how accurate this is considering Wikipedia, it is listed after Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem.
Oh, okay. But it's still a really important episode.
Yes.
Not just for the lore, but also for the Amethyst character.
Yes.
I mean, we really understand her, what her deal is at that point. It really comes to...
That crashed down on us like a ton of bricks, because Amethyst is the tomboy. I mean, nothing can make her upset, we think. And then suddenly we hear how she almost regrets being made. It's like, wow, this is like a character we've really, in a way, related to, and suddenly this comes out of nowhere, and it's shocking. And then suddenly you do understand why she is the way she is, because she's very small. She's not the same as the other Amethyst. She's not tall. She's not big. She is stunted. And it's really shocking to realize that. And I think that was another gutsy move by the writers.
Mm-hmm. And also that she's a product of this bad system that they were fighting against.
And it's not just that. I mean, even when who was it? think it may have been Jasper who said it. I can't remember. She said like a runt, a defective amethyst or something. She calls her a defective amethyst. And I thought, oh my gosh, did they really say that on a show for kids? That's pretty cool that they would go into that.
Yeah, is it even before that?
Even we didn't even know what she meant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like she said, like a defective pearl, an overcooked runt.
That was it.
Thing, you know, this
wow.
display. And we're just like, what is she talking about? Why is she so mean? Because we didn't know the gems were abnormal, quote unquote abnormal in regards to gem culture. They were just who we thought they, you know, we've seen these characters as they are. We learned to love them as they are and never thought of them as deviant. But they're all outcasts.
Yeah, we learned more of that. That's kind of what, at least when we were getting that initial arc with Peridot, I kind of liked at least when she was introduced and it was actually cooperating with the group, and we kind of got that really begin outside of the antagonistic behavior of Jasper. We got a more of an idea of what the homeworld mindset was.
Who in our little chat room here actually physically cringed when she called Yellow Diamond Claude?
I didn't cringe. I was like, that's awesome.
I thought it was awesome, and at the same
time I laughed my ass off.
I did too, and at the same time I went, oh no. No, take it back quickly. Oh,
it's like, well, you can never go home.
Nope, that's exactly what I was thinking. Nope, you're stuck.
And I think that's what she realized too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I cringed more when she was like calling Pearl like an item, like an object.
Ooh.
That was unpleasant.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's another one of my favorite episodes because it involved two of my favorite characters in that show up at that moment of their kind of battle of wits with each other, and the fact that it also had giant robots too is like, you should make giant robots. It's just a very entertaining premise.
I love when they use the robots to paint, and Steven's like, subjective.
Darn, how did I miss that? How did I miss that episode? That sounds so funny. I think I missed that one.
That is
it's a very important one.
I will go back through it. I will find it for you. Hold on.
It's part of the barn arc.
Yes, I think it was one of the first Steven bombs that we got.
That might be why I missed it then, because it was very short and it was just thrown out. Okay, that might be why I missed it.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the Barn is what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, Back to the Barn. It's because Peridot has agreed at this point to basically tell the crystal gems at the insisting of Steven about what the cluster is, of what she knows about it, and that they devise a plan to make a machine that will go down to the Earth's core and basically find a way to destroy it if they can.
I'm getting two images. I have one of them looking at a blackboard with the very teddy bear-like Steven Universe in a drill or a rocket ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Amethyst posing in a swimsuit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so funny.
She never ceases to amaze me. Oh my gosh. She's so great.
And when she turned into a helicopter.
What? I love it when she turns into the horse.
Oh, yes.
I thought that horse, I am jealous of that horse's lipstick. Oh my gosh. That's great.
Yeah, but the music in this, like, it's definitely, if I could pick any one song that I'll go back to and listen to as many times over, it is the song from Mindful Education. That is basically when I'm at the lowest of the low, I turn on that song, and I won't say it always completely cheers me up, but it gives me that peace of mind to kind of get myself back, my head back on my shoulders. And surprisingly enough, a lot of Rebecca Sugar's songs kind of do that for me. Even songs that weren't made for that show, for Steven Universe, but even some stuff that she did for Adventure Time too. Like like you said, there's some very there's sincerity and honesty in each and every one, and that's that honesty that I feel like really kind of brings me, a lot of peace.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And the song in particular is so powerful and so important. Like, Rebecca had said that she wanted to teach, she just came in the room one day and she's like, what if we make an episode where we teach kids about like mindful meditation? And everybody's like,
uh-oh.
So, but then, they turned into what they turned it into. And it's one of the most wonderful episodes they've ever made, and it's such
Agreed.
an important one. It's such an important lesson.
And
And that song is so, it's helped me too, Rachel. Like when I'm just, you get overwhelmed with your brain and you lose sight of yourself, which is a really real thing that can happen. And it's important to remember that your thoughts aren't you, they're just, watch them go by. It's so helpful.
Don't let your brain control you too, because I mean your brain's essential, of course. We can't think without it, but then you can do things, to make you think. You can have weird thoughts, and if you let them take control, you can sink into your unhappiness. And I think the whole point of that song is to let you know it's just a thought is a thought. Just let it go by.
It's also important to feel bad. Like, sometimes we're taught like you have to smile all the time and be cheerful, but like if you feel bad, you need to let yourself feel bad.
It kind of
that whole emotion and let it get to where it needs to go.
It kind of reminds me of that social stigma we have about, what we were talking about Stephen having a little bit of a feminine side, about how, we have these guys, we're big, strong men, but when you hear about them crying, other guys will say, oh, that's ridiculous. Men don't cry. I mean, one of the things when my dad was growing up, my grandfather would always tell him, don't cry. Because it was seen as a sign of weakness. But I'm seeing more and more now, even characters like that who are strong characters, even in anime, strong male characters do cry more often. And I like to see that because, you shouldn't just restrain emotions like that. It's not healthy.
You can't repress them either. At that moment, Stephen had so much on his plate and he just didn't want to think about it because it was so much.
Yeah.
But he had to, and he was not alone, and Connie was there to help him, and like, you don't have to do this by yourself, and it's okay. I mean, the things that happened aren't okay, but it's okay to feel bad about it because it's natural.
Of course. Absolutely. And when we have Connie, the subject of Connie, I know Stephen has, of course, the crystal gems as his friends, but I love how they emphasize he is really close to Lars and Sadie, but when you really think about it, Connie is almost like his best friend, but that's just one best friend. And it shows how, in terms of his human relationships, how you really don't have to go past more than one friend to be happy. Yeah. I mean, he has this great relationship with her, and that's when he's not with his other friends, with Garnet and Amethyst and Pearl. That's all he needs. I mean, he's with her, and that's great. So he can be with his friends. He can be with one friend, and he's happy. He finds a way to be happy.
Yeah,
he doesn't put any rules on friendship.
No, yeah, you're allowed to have more than one best friend. You don't need to have, you don't need to surround yourself with people in order to feel good about yourself.
Exactly.
But yeah, so real quick before we wrap up today's episode, let's kind of delve a little bit into what happened with the recent season finale. Since obviously, if we had to, it makes sense why the episode prior to this, which was called Escapism, is so quiet. Like as we mentioned before, that we took a return to the Watermelon Island, the Watermelon Stephen Island, and
I love those little guys.
For lack of a better term, basically to just kind of brace us for this big huge event, which is basically wrapping up this entire arc of Stephen attempting to try to get on the same level of the Diamonds in order to have, get White Diamond's attention in order to get her to come back to Earth and heal the corrupted gems. But he's attempted to try and do this through a ball, but unfortunately just fusing basically got him and Connie thrown away into this semi-prison. And now this entirety of this episode is him looking to get back, get back the crystal gems, Garnet, Pearl, and Amethyst, who were locked up for trying to defend him, or bubbled for trying to defend him. And this is basically using all of everything he's learned, how much he's grown up in order to finally reach out to the other Diamonds and get them to listen.
It's also great to see that Stephen was not done growing as a character when we learned the big reveal about Rose Quartz, which I think we kind of hoped for in a way. I mean, because when you see her and they kept Pink Diamond in the shadows so long, and you wonder, why aren't they talking about this character? She must have been important. And then they revealed the big truth, and suddenly everything in all the past seasons suddenly clicked.
Yes. The fact that Rose Quartz was in fact the fourth diamond, Pink Diamond, the youngest, more notably the youngest of all four diamonds, the smallest. She is a bit on the outs with the other diamonds. Earth was her very first colony in terms of, bringing into basically asserting her authority over the rest of her court, and she came to realize something very, important, the fact that what they were doing to the planets that they left behind, but the other diamonds really didn't. They loved her. They very much loved her, but they still saw her as a child. That's very important to say, that they, much like the crystal gems in a way, kept seeing Stephen as a child for the longest time and wanted to protect him and not really let him in on all these big secrets of what their lives were like, and the things they were fighting and the culture they came from. They didn't, not necessarily trusting him then, but eventually they came to see how much he was growing up as a result. And so basically this episode kind of condenses of basically everything that Stephen has learned up to this point, and using those same empathetic, and kind compassion, wanting to talk things out and reasoning with, White Diamond, of course, but then also winning over both Blue and Yellow Diamond. Very, and it's probably those are. And if I could pick out my favorite points of the finale, I mean, all the fusions we get to see are fantastic, but I love the moments he gets with Blue and Yellow.
It's a great way to end that season. It's one surprise after the other. I think Obsidian was the biggest surprise. That was like shocking. You don't expect that from all of them fusing together, and to see this character who looks nothing like the crystal gems at all, like a dark looking character, you don't expect that. And that was a really neat twist, because they could have made it a generic, it's like Alexandrite almost. They could have made it something like that, but they didn't. It's really dark looking, and I loved that whole concept. That is really neat. It's almost like magma, which is kind of how crystals are formed. She kind of looks like magma. That's a neat idea.
Obsidian's volcanic rock, and if you think about it, if you combine all colors together, like if you're mixing paint, you get black.
Yeah, you get black, absolutely.
But it was so cool to see her because because they're the temple, and we've been wondering who this temple woman is the whole time, and we finally get to see them at the very end, and it was
that's right.
But there's even a subtle difference too between this version of Obsidian and the one that we see with the temple, because the one the actual temple itself has kind of curled hair, much like Rose Quartz, but this one is more like Stephen's hair.
Exactly.
Black and puffy.
That's neat.
So Stephen's hair is shaped like a rose. If you look at
oh my gosh,
toy art,
I didn't know that.
The rose poof.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? I never noticed that before.
Yeah, it doesn't really read in the show itself, but the Crewniverse are the ones who submitted the official designs for the Funko toys and things. And
cool.
It's his head is like a rose petals. His hair is so cute.
Oh, that's so cute.
He's so cute.
He is.
He was fusing with everybody because he was Pearl, come dance with me, and he's doing the ballet, and Garnet, he's just hugging her, I love you, Garnet.
Oh, that's just so great.
And I love how we've updated versions of because this was a fusion we were already aware of, Rainbow Quartz, which is flashback with Rose and Pearl, but here we get a brand new look for Rainbow, which I believe they've dubbed Rainbow 2.0.
Yes.
And
Rainbow Quartz is my favorite fusion, and I was so sad they only had her in one episode. Obviously, of course, because you think only Rose Quartz and Pearl can produce that fusion, but she was so pretty.
yeah, very Mary Poppins. I love Mary Poppins kind of Doctor Who
fun
kind of character. And then, of course, Sunstone, which is the fusion between Garnet and Steven, is basically, the entire time I was looking at that character, and every single time that character made an aside to the TV and broke the fourth, I'm like, we're dealing with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle here.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm looking at Sunstone right now. That is, oh my gosh, it is.
Like, we're talking about 90s, 80s cartoon characters.
This looks,
they're supposed to be like the very special episode, like Sonic Says, like.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this totally looks like something from Teenage Mutant.
Believe it.
Oh yeah, this looks like a mascot from the 90s. Oh my, I know it's just like something you'd see on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's Bunga Kawa instead of Cowabunga. Like,
oh my gosh, really?
Yes.
I don't know how I miss all these good episodes. I watch everything and I didn't see the one with Sunstone. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I watched a last part of that. I missed the intro. Oh, darn it.
It's all right. Now you'll go back and watch it.
I saw the ending part of it, but I didn't see this part. Oh, I guess this wasn't in it when I saw. Darn you, YouTube. Oh my gosh.
It is a 4-part episodes.
Okay, that explains why I didn't see her then. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I love the design.
Like, Sunstone is just like one of those like smiley suns, you know? Like, I love Sunstone so much.
I really hope we see more of them.
Me too. I want to see more of all of them. Like, they're all so fun and cute, and even like seeing Smokey with their new outfit, like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, apparently, I listened on the Steven Universe podcast. They wanted to give Rainbow 2.0 a scarf to make them look even more like Doctor Who. They couldn't, but because the way the fusions work, their outfit is a combination of the two characters that are fusing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed to have the scarf somewhere on Pearl's new design, but they just couldn't figure it out. So they just had to drop it, unfortunately.
That's fair.
No.
That's fair. I mean, the Doctor Who reference was already made, so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She got a sweet jacket.
I know. Pearl,
I love that.
Pearl got the 80s shoulder pads, and I'm digging it. Yes. I'm so digging it.
So good. Because it's like her jacket she wore in Last One at a Beach City, which is probably one of my all-time favorite episodes. I love that episode.
I am the original rebel.
Please, I've been breaking the law for thousands of years. But yeah, the finale. It's like everything we ever wanted to happen happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like it ends so satisfyingly, and the reason why it does is because it actually is the ending of the original plan for Steven Universe, like the original story that they, Rebecca and her team intended to tell.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh,
like they kind of did write it almost to be a series finale, because I guess they weren't sure if they're going to be renewed or what was going on. So it is the end of this story of Steven. But we're going to get more Steven. But when we do, they were saying it's going to be very different.
Okay.
Because this story is finished. This part of the story is finished. So the next story we're going to get is going to be a completely different chapter.
Oh, wow.
But is it? My question is it Steven? Is it still going to be told through Steven's eyes, or are we going to take the perspective of a different character?
Are we going to go forward into the future or something? And
I don't know. I feel like, the show is called Steven Universe, so it's still probably going to be about Steven.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know. Like, Allie, like you mentioned, maybe doing a time skip. I feel like that's what a lot of people are talking about, and that makes sense to me too. One, because like they're trying to do like every anime trope ever, right? And that's like a pretty classic anime trope.
Goku starts off as a little kid in the first Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball Z, he's an adult.
Yeah, or Naruto does the same thing. And it's not like Cartoon Network hasn't done time skips before, like they did with Young Justice. They've done it with Ben 10.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they've marketed that in the past. But so maybe that's what they'll do.
They could.
Issue with a time skip is because the whole show up until this point has been through Steven's perspective, it'll be kind of weird if we as the audience just jump in medias res and we're not up to speed with what Steven knows.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. Maybe they'll, if they do like a recap episode, or maybe it's like not a major time skip. I don't know, but there's definitely other conflicts to address because they definitely completed the arc with like the familial aspect of things, like getting over the trauma and connecting and seeing eye to eye and understanding and changing your mind. But there is still, you know, the fact that the gems have made like hundreds of colonies and have had millennia of colonization that they just kind of have to figure out what they're going to do moving forward with that.
Yeah. Like, there's open-ended, like, okay, how, now that they have accepted that, you know, Steven is living on Earth with the gems, how are, like, what gems are going to want to live on Earth now? What gems are going to stay on Homeworld? How are the new gems that have chosen to live on Earth, how are they going to, what kind of place will they find living on Earth? How will they blend in?
Homeworld going to do now? What's it going to look like? Are they going to keep colonizing planets?
Exactly.
Are
we going to get to see other planets that have been colonized?
And the damage that's been done? Because, you know, they've probably, you know, so many lives have been lost.
Well, they've been doing this for, how long has the Gem Empire been around? They said 6,000 years?
No more. It's
more than that.
Like, we honestly don't know, because we actually still don't know the origins of the gems and like where the diamonds came from.
That might be something cool to bring up. I mean, we do have that really cool idea, like we don't really fully know, and that does add a little bit of a mystery to the show, but in a way, you know, people are curious, where did they come from? Were they made by something?
It's implied that at least there's a you could call it a throwaway line when Steven is confronting White Diamond in the finale. White Diamond alludes the fact that Pink Diamond was a part of her, and that in a way the other two diamonds are as well. So the idea is that maybe that the other diamonds were created by White Diamond for whatever reason.
It's interesting you say that, because I did a little bit of reading up again on White Diamond, and what's really cool is it just might be a little side note, but on the page here on the Steven Universe Wikia page, it talks about how White Diamond acts as a motherly figure to all the other characters. So it could be possible that she did make all of them, but then again, you also have to ask, who made her?
That is a very good question. We don't know.
Because if you look at her, she looks a lot different than the other gems. Even some of the other bloggers mentioned that her face, if you look at her, she looks a lot different than the other characters.
Because she's just a shining light.
She is, and she looks almost more human than a lot of the characters in the show, even at least in her expressions.
Somewhat. I mean, part of that is because she was animated very well.
Oh, beautifully.
Baxter.
Absolutely.
James Baxter.
What?
James Baxter.
You mean the guy who animated in Disney films?
Yep.
Yes.
The very same.
Oh
the
my
scene
God.
where Steven reforms was animated by him. That's why it looks so good.
Oh, no wonder the animation's great. You have James Baxter on the team.
Yep. They brought him.
Grief.
Apparently, Rebecca Sugar, apparently James Baxter's daughter is a big fan of Steven, and so she went to her birthday party and gave her a drawing, and James was like, "Thanks for doing that. I owe you a favor."
Coolest birthday ever for that little girl. Oh my gosh.
And so James is like, "Thank you so much for coming, Rebecca, and surprising my daughter. Like, I'll, if you ever need anything." And Rebecca's like, "I'm going to hold on to this favor."
Yeah,
like,
I need this favor.
Wow.
I have this finale I want to do, and I really love for you to help. And he was like, "Okay." So gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
It almost looks like it was 3D animated, like especially White Diamond in that part, like the parallaxing, like it's so crisp, but it's not. It's 100% 2D on paper and pencil.
That's incredible.
That good.
It's James Baxter. I mean, this guy is an amazing animator. And when you can definitely tell there's a lot of detail put into this character. I'm actually, now that the more I think about it, I'm not surprised that someone like him was behind this animation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was some inspiration for whenever I looked at White Diamond, there's I always got flashbacks from my science fiction film class that one of the first science fiction films, Metropolis.
Definitely.
The robot lady kind of made me think of her.
And she looks like these kind of like 1920s kind of illustrations, with the heavy makeup, lidded eyeshadow in the lips.
Like a black and white like those black and white cartoons. Like she has the very long eyelashes, the black colored lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love that. I love that look. I mean, her design is gorgeous.
Her shoes are unstoppable.
Oh, girl, I want those shoes.
They're the best shoes.
I don't care if I need a shrink ray. If I need a shrinking ray, I want those shoes. Oh my gosh.
On the podcast, they mentioned that White Diamond sort of considers every gem to be an extension of herself.
Oh,
which
interesting.
Makes sense, because if she created the diamonds also are part of creating gems. We saw the extraction chambers where they kind of collect the sweat from the diamonds, which there actually is moisture that comes from gems when they're formed in real life, but that stuff's collected, and according to Rebecca Sugar, that's what they put in the injectors to make gems.
It's also interesting. As you know how we first see White Diamond, she doesn't really move. She almost looks like a statue. And it makes you think, is she part of that planet? Is the planet her? Did she create all of them? Is she just an extension of that world?
In a way, but it's not it's in a sense entirely physically, but I think because they hollowed out the ground of Home pretty thoroughly to create as many gems on there as possible. But then when they ran out of room there, they began to move to different planets to do the same thing. But yeah, that's really interesting that you point that out, because I was curious about that, Nina, about why they these extraction chambers, that they were just sitting in yellows as a sauna, blues as a bath, and what the purpose behind that was for. But now that makes sense. That's the stuff that they put in the ground in order to form the gems that we see. Because we see when, I think there was a part where I think when Steven was singing in the recent arc Familiar, he makes a pebble.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and it does it explains a lot about the Diamond's attitudes, because they really do see the other gems as belonging to them, because they're almost part of their essence.
Oh,
they
interesting.
create them from their own bodies.
Oh, that's interesting. That would explain then why they have that. They have that. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's just a female-run society, matriarchal. That's it, and that's really a neat idea. Because
Rebecca, she wanted to sort of subvert how we in culture, when we don't know the gender of something, we usually just say he. When we talk about aliens, we just say little gray men or green men. Well, how do we know they're men? They're aliens. They don't even have genders like humans.
Yeah, so how do we know that ET was a male?
Exactly. We just assume, because that's how our society works. So Rebecca wanted to do the opposite. So instead of assuming all aliens are dudes, let's assume all aliens are women. But they're not even really women. They're genderless creatures that are sort of female presenting.
It's in that Ursula K. Le Guin novel. It's what's it called? It's not Heart of Darkness. It's in the Left Arm of Darkness or something, or the Left Hand of Darkness, I think is the name of the novel. It's where this guy goes to this planet. Ursula K. Le Guin made Earthsea, the Tales from Earthsea.
Oh, okay.
And she did this book called, I think it's The Left Hand of Darkness, and it's where this man goes to this planet on a diplomatic mission, and all of the aliens there are asexual. They change genders. They've been genetically designed to do that, and so, but most of them look female. And so the interesting part, when I remember reading this, and then Steven Universe came along, and all I kept thinking about was, I wonder if there's a connection here. Was that because Ursula K. Le Guin was one of the first authors to do something like that.
And it's very important that they're, these non-binary women, because that's how Rebecca Sugar actually identifies. Throughout the course of making Steven Universe, she sort of slowly came out. On the panel, she came out as bisexual.
That's right.
Talking about things like Ruby, the significance of Ruby and Sapphire, and, like even Pearl and Rose and all these things. And later on throughout the series, she also came out as non-binary, but she identifies as like a non-binary woman. So she uses she, her, they, them pronouns. And the gems were sort of a way for her to explore her own gender and her own identity, because they're, again, like I said, they're reflections of her, but in more than just her relationship with her brother, but also this idea of being a genderless being that's a female presenting. And it's it really, I've never seen anything like it, honestly.
No.
You won't. I mean,
children's television.
There were always, even when we were growing up, some of the shows we would watch, that there were some characters that might hint at that. Like there would be one or two episodes, maybe there were characters who you'd kind of wonder, is this a male or a female? But it was never really tackled before. And it took a lot of guts to do that. And I think she did it very well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of fighting too. Like, the wedding between Ruby and Sapphire, which was such a triumph.
Oh yeah.
Took a lot of fighting.
Big moment with that.
A huge moment. And they didn't pull any punches with it. Like they put Ruby, who's the more masculine character, in a dress, and Sapphire, the more feminine character, in a suit.
Not what I expected.
And they kissed, and fused, and it was a marriage between two female presenting characters, and never happened on children's television before.
No.
It was hard to get that to happen. Like, there was a lot of back and forth.
I think the closest thing we ever got was in Gravity Falls, the last episode. Have you seen Gravity Falls?
Yes, with the two police officers.
Well, even then, that's kind of ambiguous. You don't know if they're just two guys going, "Oh, I love you, man," like what men do, which is what I got out of it. But then, of course, the show's creator explained why that happened, and it's like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah,
cool. I didn't know that, but cool. So I guess anyone can see that though. But this one is obviously tackling that idea. And I remember watching the episode thinking that was really cool how they handled this. I mean, they handled it. I mean, it wasn't this big show. They just made it seem so normal.
Yeah, because it is. And it was not. It was a struggle to make happen, because Rebecca had to sort of go back and forth with the network and producers who were saying well, we don't think it's bad, but we don't think you should do it because blah 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 blah. And she was very stubborn about it. And was like, look, the only reason you can give me for why we can't do this is wrong and unfair. I'm queer. A huge part of the team is also queer. She was very sticking to her guns about it. You have to let me tell this story the way it needs to be told. And
absolutely. When the network tries to tell an artist not to do something, it never works out. And I'm glad they did give her a chance to do it. And it's very well handled. I remember watching this thinking, okay, yep, these are two characters I know. I just want to see what happens next.
And the song "Change Your Mind" was actually not originally written for the show.
Really?
It was a personal song Becca wrote for herself while she was struggling to make the wedding.
Bless her heart.
Because, it's tough. The whole impetus for the show is to kind of that song sums up the whole point of the show.
It really does.
It does.
It's about, you're worthy, you have value, and you can recognize your own value. And other people can only do that if they, change their mind. If they have the wrong idea, it's not your fault, and it doesn't make you any lesser.
All you can do, and this is, I think, what the show does teach, all you can really do is just show respect for people and just love them the way they are. Because, look, you can't change people. You can't do that. Just love them for who they are, because they're good people just like you. They're wonderful. Who cares? Just like them as they are.
Exactly. And, you have to, if you want to understand them, you have to open your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get out of your own head, as it were.
Exactly. You have to just break that barrier, get out, and realize, you know what, they're great. Just treat them like regular people, because that's what they are. Just be nice to everybody.
Yeah. And that's what Steven's all about. Like, be nice to everybody, even people you don't understand.
Exactly.
Because you can understand them if you try.
Yes, if you just try, and you might be surprised.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered a great deal. Like you said, there's still a whole lot. Like we haven't broken down. I mean, we've talked about quite a few different episodes and everything. But there is still a lot to cover about this show, and it's good to know that it's still here to stay. There's supposed to be a movie coming out later this fall. They said fall. We don't know which month of fall, but they said fall. So
it could be 2 falls from now, but we don't know. It will be the fall.
Yes, we know it'll be the fall of 2019. So we'll stay glued to any information updates in terms of when that's going to come out. But I'm interested to see what new direction the show will take now that this story is over.
Oh yes, we are all excited.
It'll be fun to see the characters.
Mm-hmm. It'll also be fun to see if the animation's already great, but will they make it a little more cinematic? Will they bring James Baxter? Will they bring all these people in to make it a little more really go over the top?
James Baxter's very expensive.
Yes.
Oh, I know, but it's still a little hope of mine.
You only bring him in for the really moments because
sorry, James, I can only afford you for 5 minutes. Go.
He knows, he's a man who knows what he's worth.
Well, he's animated some of the best Disney characters of all time, so of course he knows what he's doing. They just probably handed him the script, said, "Here, go."
They did the storyboard. Okay. Yeah, sure.
James is like, I got this.
I got this. He just takes one look and goes, okay, I'm going. But really? That's it? Okay.
Yep, I got it. I'm good.
5 minutes later, he has the whole animated segment. Oh, if only.
Which you can follow. Yeah, I believe he does have a YouTube channel, so which has that exact clip.
And a Twitter.
Oh, sweet.
We'll include those in the show notes if you're curious to, if you haven't already found him or following him already. But yes, this was really awesome. I've been really excited to do this episode for a long time since I've been a fan of this for, not nearly as long as some of you have, but it's been
same here.
Quite a ride.
I don't mean to brag, but
no, I'm glad we have that kind of background history. The fact that you were there from the very beginning. Thank you, Nina.
Yes, it's always good to have a really hardcore fan. Thanks, Nina. I mean, there's stuff I didn't even remember.
I literally watch the show all the time.
Oh my goodness. Lucky you having all the time to do that.
I don't know if I have all the time, but when I
binge watch on the weekends, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Well, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. It's been a really wonderful chat, and hope you'll be sticking around for when we put out some new episodes coming. We're going to take a bit of a week break before we get back into this. But if you want to, in the time off, to basically tune into some of our previous episodes, you will find them on our webpage, on our podcast tab there on the website, animationforadults.com. And you can also find them on podcast.com, on Podbean, on Stitcher, and on iTunes. If you want to see what we're up to or maybe stay in the know for when new episodes come out, you're welcome to follow us on any form of our social media. We're on primarily on Facebook and Twitter. Twitter is where we often make a lot of our big updates, but we're also on Instagram, on Tumblr, and I believe we're also on Pinterest as well. So go ahead and follow us on there if you like. And in terms of our own private social media, so the rest of our cast here. So, Nina, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Ninianichi.
Allie, where can we find you?
You can find me at Twitter at AllieCatDreams, and then you can follow my artwork on Instagram at the same username at AllieCatDreams.
Yes, and she's made some really wonderful art. A lot of our big holiday and feature specials Allie has put together. So just go ahead and check that out and all of her other work. And also, if you want us to continue to support the website and everything that we do, new podcast episodes, other big stuff that we have in the works for 2019, please definitely follow the link down there for our Patreon account as well, and become a monthly donor, as well as our Ko-fi. If you're not sure if you want to maybe invest in a larger sum of the pot on our Patreon, definitely check out our Ko-fi page to buy us a virtual cup of coffee. We would definitely appreciate the support. And as always, I'm going to give a little shout out to our wonderful folks at Animation Nights New York, and say hello. Shout out to Yvonne and everyone out there who work very hard to bring all those wonderful short films to those monthly screeners for everyone in New York City. Definitely check those out. We'll leave a link to the website in the show notes. And if you're as always, if you are an independent filmmaker and want to feature your short film, there is a submission link on ANNY if you would like to submit your short film to that. So I'll leave that in the link as well.
It's free and rolling, so you can submit at any time.
Yep.
No deadlines.
And that's pretty sweet, because I've been looking at some of those other film submissions, and it looks like if you have to either submit by a particular time or put in a little bit of a fee in order to submit for that. So if you don't want to bother with either of those things, this sounds like a good place to get your work seen.
No risk.
No risk. That's good. All right. Thank you once again for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the AFA podcast. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.